while I was in the US and kind of grinding away at my corporate life and what I don't know if I can curse, but it was just hell on earth. Like it was just miserable. I was so unhappy. It wasn't me. While I was doing that, I never felt free enough to even admit that, creativity, something like style, something like fashion was something that you could even be interested in, because I always thought, oh, that's vapid, right? Like, because you're a corporate lawyer, so you're supposed to think anything that's like not buttoned down is superficial. But then moving here, I've had the freedom to dream. I've had the freedom to be who I am. I've had the freedom to embrace what I love. And so I've embraced fashion. So I've started the influencer path. I'm also working on starting a fashion line. I have a friend here who is in the investing space, and he is helping me figure out how to kind of get that started, like how to get the financing and whatnot for that, so that I don't have to use all of my money.
Okay, so thing one, sorry to interrupt. What is your TikTok? I'm gonna put it in the chat.
It's Adriel, Adriel, Felice, Felise. So
Okay, it's the
that,
same, both
yeah,
Insta.
it's the same as it's the same on Instagram, YouTube, everything, Pinterest,
But
like
it
the
seems
whole
like
thing.
TikTok is like where
TikTok.
you've really taken off.
Yeah, TikTok is where I've really like taken off. So it's weird. um, so I'm also working on starting a fashion line, and then interesting enough, my dad was talking about me with one of his cousins who works in a publishing company in New York, and she has suggested that I write a book, actually. And so she's asked me to sit down and crank out a book, and I'm behind.
I heard about this book last year, Adriel.
I wrote that book. She wants me to now write a different one. So
Okay.
she had me start off writing one on Paris. And so I wrote half a book on Paris, just little short stories about life in Paris. And she told me, oh, well, you need to blow up on some social media, because publishing companies now don't do like promoting of your book. They expect you to do it yourself. So like, it's more helpful if you like blow up on social media, then it'll be easier for us to sell you a book. And I said, okay. So then I did. And then she's like, oh, write a book on fashion. And I was like, oh, so you mean the topic I originally wanted to write about, but you said no and made me write a book on Paris. And now I get to go back to fashion. So yes, now it's a completely different book. So it's going to be she wants me to write on a mix of fashion and faith, which I find interesting, but I've managed to come up with some good life stories to put in there and
Fashion
make
and
it
faith.
funny. Yeah.
Faith, like spirituality.
Yeah, like Christianity. So she wants me to merge the two, which mainly now involves my telling funny stories about the people that I go to church with and talking about the style in the church and that sort of thing. So fashion is connecting to faith. It's all very humorous.
Adriel, I'm going to ask you to write a book, even though I'm not in publishing. I'm going to ask you to write a book on like how investing has helped you get to where you're at. And we will find a way to make it work.
Absolutely. Yes. I can just sit there and start cranking it. Yeah, no. So she's now made me, so it's like, now I'm cranking away on the second one. And I was like, this is what I wanted to write about before. It was fashion. I didn't know about faith, but we can throw that in there too. So yeah. So that's what I'm doing now, projects, juggling them in the air.
That's amazing. I'm very excited about your fashion line, because it's so funny when you know people only online, you have no idea like how tall they are. Like I'm actually like a petite woman, but
me too.
Like people don't know that. Yeah. Another petite woman. So I'm very excited about this line, and I hope it's like geared towards petite women.
Yes, just because
I'm just like putting that in there.
It's so frustrating. All the pants have to get here. At least it's in France, it's cheap to get pants tailored, right? Like it's €6, no matter how much you're having them cut off. So I have people cut off this much. But in the US, they charge you based upon how much fabric they have to cut. So if you have to, yes. So in the US, if you have to
That
get a
is
him like this much, it's $40. But if you have to do like this much, it's $20. So
I have never heard a bigger
it's
racket
a
in my
racket.
life, and I am a money coach. What? Whether you snip here or here, what difference does it make
difference
to
does
you?
it make? But yes,
And like, look, take that rest of the fabric and go make another pair of pants with
yes.
it.
But so yeah, that's one of the things, at least in France, I get my pants tailored and it doesn't like, it's not like, oh, I get this pant tailored this month. Oh, next month there's a different pant. I'm like, okay.
So this is slightly off topic, but not entirely. It's I'm in India right now where women are more petite, and especially like it's regional, like people from the north. Like I was just talking to a good friend of mine. Her family's from the north of the country, and they're much bigger because there's like there's more milk, so they're big and strong. Whereas we're smaller, more petite people. But the clothes here fit me really much better, and so like I like scooped up like jeans. I'm like gonna go look for underwear. Like everything just fits me better, and I didn't realize how much clothes that fit you properly affect how you feel. And just having even like I didn't realize how much even my skin is like Indian skin, and like the products that I find here are suit my skin better. And so all these things, like when you're fitting into a world that doesn't you don't belong, like there's all these things that you don't even realize are sort of like impeding you from feeling your best self.
Yeah, you feel when you're someplace you don't belong, you feel a friction. Like there's a friction in everything. Just a small, tiny, and it doesn't have to be like a huge amount of friction, right? But it's
You don't
just,
even know. Like I didn't
yeah,
even know.
exactly. Like it's something so tiny. And so when I left that environment and I left that job and I gave myself permission to just say, this isn't me, I'm out, figure it out someplace else. I'll go learn another language. It's okay. I'll figure it out, osmosis. It's being in here, being in this culture, being in this place, like everything about it just works better for me. Everything, like you're saying, skincare, I'm able to find better skincare than I could find in the US, and it's more reasonably priced, right? Like, so I'm not paying an absurd amount of money for it, right? So you're also saving money. The food is better. Oh my gosh. Like when I moved here, I lost like 10 pounds, which I guess is 4 kilos. I'm trying to figure out the kilos. I can't quite figure it out. Maybe it's
It's okay.
5 kilos.
Most of us here in Canada, and even though we work on the metric system, for some reason, we use pounds for weight.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
So-
Good. I haven't quite figured out the kilos. I walked home with 2 kilos of potatoes and was like, I will be eating potatoes for the rest of my life. Accident. But yeah, like I lost all this weight because I was now eating food that was healthier and better for me. So there's just less friction in daily life now, which is, it's nice. Like you're saying, and you feel better. Like the clothes, when I go to the store, I'm always the same size. Always. It's nice not to be standing there like, is it this? Maybe it's a small, maybe it's an extra small, maybe it's the triple extra small, because we're changing all the sizing to make everybody
or
feel
am
better.
I 6 or am I an 8? Like
yes. Like or is what size is it today? It would drive me crazy. Yeah.
All right. Sonia has some more questions. So let us go on to the next questions.
Well, I'm kind of curious about if you can just let us know, where were you based in the US and what led to the move to Paris?
Yes. So I was based in Washington, D.C. I was grinding away as an attorney. I have been at a law firm, then I left and went in-house at a public company. And so what made me leave? It's a long story, but I'll compact it. Basically, whether I had been at the law firm or in-house at that company, I was never appreciated as a woman of color. Nothing I did was valued. I would do all of this work that other people didn't do. And who would be the only person who didn't get the bonus, right? Like me, right? And I remember when I was working at the law firm, when I knew I had to leave was the day that I literally got to the office and I circled the building for 45 minutes, unable to go inside. And I remember I went down to Macy's and I got some chocolate and I was like, ma'am, why do you think I should go to work today? And she was like, because you need money. I was like, that's no longer an incentive to go. So that's how I knew I needed to quit the law firm. So then when I got at the public company and I was dealing with the exact same stuff, this nonsense where people aren't compensating you fairly, you're fighting for every little cookie, even though you have more experience, more expertise. You're the only person in the company who can do the things that you do. And I was just dealing with that. And I just never, I just remember this incident happened where I was not given a bonus. And I just became so angry about it. I was just like, you know what? I don't have to put up with this in my life. This is now the second job I've worked at where I've dealt with this sort of thing where I'm not being treated, I'm not being compensated fairly. And no matter what anybody wants to tell you, it's like how these people compensate you is how they view you. It's how they consider your worth. It's how they consider your value, period. Plain and simple. No matter, they can tell you they love you all they want. If you don't pay me fairly, then you don't really value me.
You can't pay your rent with hugs.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't care about you telling me I did a great job. I don't actually need to ever hear you tell me I did a great job. I just need you to add another zero to my paycheck and we can all be happy. And so when that happened, I just said, you know what? I'm done. And I quit. And I remember I was sitting in my apartment and I was just so upset. I maybe spent about 2 weeks really, really upset and kind of disoriented. Like, I can't believe this has happened to me again, where I've been at this place and it's been miserable and supposed to be so much better getting out of the law firm, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember one morning I woke up, I looked around my apartment, I said, yeah, this is no longer your home. You're moving to Paris. And I just proceeded to do all of the things you do to move to Paris. So I literally sat down and was like, how to get a visa to move to France. I Googled it and I found one, and there is a visa where if you have adequate like money to live on, you can move to France, and it's a relatively simple visa to get. So I applied to that. As part of the proof I showed to get that visa and the proof I showed to keep that visa is my investments. So the investments that I learned, like how to invest in this course, like that's what I use to get here and to stay here. And now
wait. Like, so you use that kind of like as collateral?
No, you just show that I have money. It proves that I have money. Like I have a substantial source of
something, you have money to fall back on. You're not coming with $8 in your pocket.
Exactly.
When I moved to the UK, it was the same thing. They were like, show us your bank accounts.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you had way more money than I did when I moved to London, because I was just like finishing school, like university. I had like $10,000 Canadian, which went very, very quickly.
I was about to say, in the UK, that went like that, right?
3 months. Yeah.
Luckily,
I found a job within 3 months.
Fortunately.
But yes, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
Like money is power. Even if you don't need to spend it. I just wanted to be sure that you didn't actually need to give it to them. You just need to show them that you had financial resources to fall back on.
Exactly. It's just proof that I have substantial financial resources. It's how I getting an apartment in France is really hard. That's my proof of substantial financial resources. So that's how I was able to get a new apartment. And so these are the things that are proof. And so I remember I like applied for the visa. I think I submitted it and I got it back a week later, which then seemed like, oh, that's so great. But now that I live here, I live in France, I recognize that was like a miracle from heaven. Like a little baby cherub came down and like clearly sat on the French official who approved it, because nothing in France moves fast. Everything moves at a glacial pace. So the fact that happened in a week was awesome. I found a moving company. I got a realtor in France, and the moving company showed up. and then I got my visa, and then 2 days later it was my birthday. So I had a birthday party, and then I invited everyone to know. I was like, hey, I'm also moving to Paris. So like, if you want to see me, come to this birthday party at this place and this time, because like I'm gonna be out of here in 5 days. And so yeah,
So
the
all this
day
happened in like what time frame? Like
about
when
2
you were
weeks.
like, I'm done with this life.
Let's see. I'm done happened in mid-February, and I was in Paris 3 weeks later.
Oh my God. Usually people plan these things for years. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Adriel had this thing up her sleeve for like years and she was being stealthy about it. And like now she's just like, I'm in Paris. Like, but she, she was I was like, she's been planning this for a long time because that's what people do. I don't operate like that. I also, when I moved to England, I kind of had it in my head and talk about it. And then I just kind of, people are like, why are you moving to England? I'm like, I've been thinking about this. This is what I want to do. I just didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat of why Paris and why France? Did you know from before, or how did that come to you?
Yeah, so basically the first time I visited Paris was in 2017. I really wanted to go to the French Open. So I organized a siblings trip, AKA I want my brother to come with me on a trip and carry my luggage, sort of trip. And I was like, we're going to Paris, you guys. So we went, and I'll never forget my younger brother and I. My older brother lives in Geneva, so he just took the train in, right? My younger brother and I had flown in from New York. We got to our hotel, we changed, we were exhausted, we were grumpy. And the thing about Paris and France in general is that you cannot eat all day long. So when we arrived, there were no restaurants that were serving food. So we were grumpy and hungry and jet lagged. And we went to this cafe and we were arguing. And this woman was like, well, I'll bring you guys some cheese and some meat. And we were like, thank you, ma'am. And we were eating the food, and we have finally stopped arguing. And my younger brother goes, Adri, look, we're in Paris. And I looked up, and there were all of these Haussmannian buildings. And I just knew instantly, I was like, oh, this is my home. This is my home, and this is where I'm supposed to be. And this is where I'm meant to be. And so when I woke up that morning in DC, all those years later, and said, I think that was that trip was in 2017. So I moved in 2020. When I woke up in DC in that apartment 3 years later, when I looked around, I said, this is no longer my home. I knew I was going home. Like I was like, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to my home. And
you're
so,
like spiritual home.
Yeah. And every time between 2017 and 2020, I felt it was my home so strongly that I would go to Paris twice a year. And so when I went back, each time I went back, I was like, oh, thank goodness I'm home. Like, thank goodness I'm back home. And then last year, for the first time, I went to the US to visit my family. Those people gave me COVID, and I was very happy to leave them. I'll never forget when I stepped back through customs. I was like, oh, thank goodness I'm home. But this time it is home. Like I'm going to my home, like my apartment and everything, and my life here. So yeah, that's why Paris was an instant feeling of home. And I had to be here. There's no place else.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Like you were born in a place, but that's not the place you were meant to be.
Nope, never.
Because it didn't suit you.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
All right. Next question from Sonia.
I'm just curious. So I'm now interested in knowing, how did this program and the investing. So when did you join this program? How long were you in it? Where were you when you started, and where were you when you were applying for Paris? Because you've now shared with us that investing from here and your asset allocation really supported you to show your financial resources to when you're applying for your visa.
Yeah.
And that facilitated the whole approval thing. So curious to know more about what happened while you were in this program.
Yeah. So I think, when did I join? Was it 2017 or 2018? I think it was,
Oh, wow.
You know what? I
Was
don't
it-
even,
I can't remember.
time is a circle. I
Yeah.
don't even know when I launched my own program. I think it was December 2017.
Okay, so then I think so December 2017, because I remember like being kind of in the new year. So I was very, I had obviously gone to law school, so I had substantial law school debt, right? This is America. It's not any other place in the world. You know, we're going to bankrupt people when they go to school. So you buy a house in student loan debt, you know, in America. So I had a substantial amount of law school loan debt. I didn't have any debt from college, just law school loan debt. And I had been very conscious throughout my career about paying it off and paying it down. But my dad is very much someone who believes in investing, and he always has. And so he was very much like, you need to invest, you know, your money. The thing about a law firm is that when you're investing in, you know, whatever your 401ks or whatever those accounts are, they don't match it like a company does. So you have to like, it's all your money. Like it's your retirement, you own it. And I remember that I just like, during the law firm period, I just like had it in something random and paid no attention to it. But then once I left and I went to the company didn't really have a system that was very that they didn't have all of the options, like in terms of accounts that I had options at the law firm. So some of them I had to now manage on my own. And I remember they kind of like sat there for like a year. I was like, I don't know what to do with this money. Like I can only blow this up. So I really was beginning to think, okay, you know what? You're very focused on getting out of debt. So you're focused on saving your money so you can get out of this law school loan debt. You're paying, you know, as much on those loans every single month as you can. But like you also need to think about like the long-term goal, right? The goal is to have financial freedom. You cannot be in a position where you are beholden to these jobs, because these jobs can disappear like that, right? So I then decided to join Anjali's program. It was great because I finally learned how to invest that money that had basically been just sitting in this account doing nothing for a really long time. And having that, it gave me even more security as far as financially, right? Like, and I know that if like it was there, I had another little pot of money sitting somewhere, and it's growing and it's building, and it's something that I can have that can serve as an additional resource. So once I got to the point where I finally I'll never forget, I paid off my student loans in January of 2019. I made the last law school loan payment. I was so excited. I was so happy for myself. And I was like, great, you can now finally start saving and investing without having kind of this other, like all that money we're putting into the loans, you can now really put into these other vehicles. And, you know, I had read articles over the years of lawyers who quit their law firm jobs and had no money. Like they had spent, you know, $300,000 a year on who the heck knows what, cars, clothes, suits, whatever. And I was just very conscious. I didn't want that to be me. I didn't want to find myself in a position where I didn't have money. I didn't have savings. I didn't have investments. And I knew that the key to making your money grow fastest is investing it. And so that's why it was really important for me to take this course and learn how to do that, and then just have that kind of financial stability. So that's kind of how the course helped me, is it gave me even more financial stability when I made the leap. Like it made me feel more confident in what I felt more confident in the decision I was making, because I felt more confident in being able to also manage that money myself, like, and being able to manage not just that money, but also my savings, right? Like it gave me confidence. It gave me even more confidence with money in other areas of my life beyond just investing. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
That's powerful.
That's something that people going in don't always expect, or coming into this program, is that it's not just about the investing portion of your life. It's about like the way you manage money in its entirety, like whether you negotiate for a raise, how much you charge your clients if you're self-employed, everything. Like you just feel more confident. There's like such a big spillover effect. And then there's spillover effect on like your life, like how you feel about yourself. You're like, I got this. I'm in the driver's seat, not of just my money game, but I'm in the driver's seat of my life. There's like, because money is such an important part of like everything we do. Like we need money to live. Money is security. We live in a capitalist society. You can ignore it all you want,
Yeah.
but money is power,
Yeah.
And so your dad is a very smart man in telling you to invest your money. And I have heard this about lawyers. Lawyers are like my best students and my worst students. They're my best students because you guys make a lot of money. You don't know how to invest it. And a lot of times you hate your jobs. And I'm saying worse because once in a while I get someone, like, it hasn't happened in a very long time, but like, a lawyer knows how to be like, I want my money back. And this is why. I'm like, girl, you can have your money back. I don't need the like lawyer spiel. Like I don't, whatever you guys call it, like I don't need like this like scroll of like, just take your money back. Like I'm not going to lawyer up and like fight you on this.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, you guys are my best students, not my worst students. Mainly it's my best students. And also if you're not a lawyer, that's okay. But like, I've heard this story a lot that lawyers, charge exorbitant fees and take home a lot of money, but often are left with nothing. And also like lifestyle creep, right? It's an industry, and there are a lot of industries out there where like you're expected to have the nice car, you're expected to have the fancy house, your kids in private school, and like these people are left with nothing at the end of the month, or very little. Like they're so close to insolvency, but it doesn't look that way on the surface.
Yeah. A lot of lawyers live almost paycheck to paycheck, which is ridiculous if you think about it. And I just knew I remember for the first 2 years after graduating law school, when I was working at a law firm, I lived with my parents because I was like, I don't want to have these. I had a plan coming out of law school. I was like, I am not going to have this student loan debt for the next 20 or 30 years. Like this stuff has to go away. So I can live with my parents. My mom will make dinner every night, right? Like, what's the worst? I live in my childhood bedroom. Okay, that's weird, but it's better to save the money. And people used to rag on me when they learned that I lived with my parents. I mean,
you were what, like in your 20s, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what does it matter to you? Like, I'm saving money. And I'll never forget when I quit my law firm job. I didn't have another job lined up. I just needed like a mental health break. And I'll never forget, a partner told me, he goes, I never thought you would have enough money to quit this job because I assumed you spent all your money on clothes. And I remember looking at him like, sir, I lived at home with my parents for 2 years. Like, I've been saving my money and paying down my loans. Like, I just thought that was the craziest thing. Like,
and
because
also,
you live paycheck to paycheck, I have to live paycheck to paycheck.
And also, I think it's slightly misogynistic.
Yes. Also, why are you in my funds, bro?
Like, why? Like, would he have said that to a dude? Like, and like, how dare you? Like, my finances are my business.
Exactly, right? Like, nothing that's happening over here is any of your business, dear sir.
A lot of like things that will get you ahead financially are not glamorous. Like, I had a roommate until literally this current place I'm living in. Like, my business was partly funded by my roommate because they were sharing rent and utilities. And we had a really big apartment, and like, my roommates were great. Like one is like one of my best friends. Like, I didn't see it as a burden. I was like, this is a way for me to start my business and keep my overhead low. But like, that's not glamorous. People, you know, those lists of things that you should stop doing when you're 30. Have roommates always like top of the list. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. If you are married and have children, you have roommates. Okay.
Exactly.
Your husband is your roommate. He's also paying the bills. So you do not fault the single girl for doing the same thing that married people do.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. But that's a whole rant I can
Yeah,
get
yeah,
into.
that's a whole
But
other
yeah.
thing.
But yeah,
But
it's just
but
like
doing
it's-
unpopular things will get you
Yeah.
ahead financially and allow you to buy your freedom. And you've
Yeah.
like, you know,
Absolutely. And you know, you said money was power, but money is freedom. Like money is the freedom to like do what you want to be able to do. And I was actually just talking about this with somebody else about how, you know, the things that so often right now I feel like our culture and society, people want like instant gratification. They're like, oh, I instantly want to be like famous on social media and have tons of money. But it's like, no, or if someone sees me put something on, they're like, oh, well, like that's really nice. It's like, yes, but let's all remember that I grinded away for, 12 years as a corporate attorney before I managed to like realize the dream, right? like it didn't come easy. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fun, but I did it in order to be able to set myself up for a different life. Right.
like there was a lot of like planning that went into this, even though you didn't know what the end goal was. There was
Absolutely.
a lot of steps that were put in place or flagstones for you to be able to be where you are. You didn't just wake up, living paycheck to paycheck, blowing all your money on, whatever, and come to this place. There's like thought, because you knew you wanted to have at a certain level. I think you always knew, sounds like you always knew you wanted to have this freedom, and you did what was necessary in order to do it. Milen just said, I lived at my father's place for 2 years in order to buy my condo. Best investment ever. Yeah, 100%. And especially like in expensive places, it's normal. And I think we need to destigmatize some of these things, especially like for, millennials. Like we don't live in a, post-war era where, you can buy a house for $10,000.
Exactly.
My parents bought their house in 1984 in Canada, in Montreal, for $100,000 in a neighborhood that is like now super desirable. It was always like a nice neighborhood, but it's now super desirable. They just sold their house last year for just under $1 million.
That's crazy.
In 40, like just under 40 years. Like that's a huge like return on investment. Like my dad's like, wouldn't be able to. I'm like, Dad, would you be able to afford that house today if you were like younger? He's like, there's no way.
Yeah.
And he felt bad when he was selling his house, because he was like, I honestly don't think this house is worth that much. And like younger people have to pay that to buy into this lifestyle and like nice schools and like, nice lawns and, this nice neighborhood. Like it's not fair.
Yeah.
So, even like my dad can admit it. And he's like 7. Like we don't live in the same era our parents did. So we need to like cut ourselves some slack.
Yeah.
And live with the reality we're living in. That means like living with roommates or like, taking the bus. Like I just got a car recently. I've never had a car until, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So all of these things.
People used to tease me because I bought a Volkswagen Jetta when I graduated law school, because at the time I was living in a city that had like really no public transport. That's where my family is from. And they were like, they teased me about having a Jetta because they were kind of like, oh, like you're a lawyer now, shouldn't you have like a nicer car? But at the same time, they'll tease you if you get the nicer car as well. But also like, who cares? Like, I just need this. I drive it to work. It sits in the garage for the 14 miserable hours that I'm in this office. And then I drive it home, where I park it in my parents' garage, and then I work some more, and then I drive it back. And that's how it works. So like, I don't care.
I mean, it's about it's what Ramit Sethi says. He's like, there are very few money coaches or money influencers that I respect, but he's one of them. And by the way, I think he has like a Netflix special that's coming out today, if I'm not mistaken. I'm like super excited about it. But one day Ramit and I are going to do a collaboration, so just watch this space. Not there yet, but he says, what is it that he says a lot of things. Your rich life is yours, and you should do things, spend your money, spend extravagantly on things that you appreciate and that bring you joy and value, and cut ruthlessly on things that don't.
Yeah.
And so you were cutting on things that didn't bring you joy, like, the car and, living in a nice, super nice condo. Like, you chose to forego those in order to have what you have right now. And that's, it's the result.
Yeah.
Were there any more questions, Sonia?
Yeah, there is one in the chat. I just really want to just ground us into like the decision making. Like, what I felt from you is that you felt a sense of empowerment from like taking, learning more about investing and taking charge of your money and figuring out this planning. And I felt like it all fed to also making this decision, like in the fly, I'm going to move to Paris, and then making that happen so quickly. Like, so it's just like what we've been touching on is this sense of empowerment and a mindset shift that applies to all areas of our life once you start going, which is very powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, you have to, I always, a lot of people now want to talk to me. They're like, how did you move to Paris? I'm like, listen, it wasn't that I had the plan for 5-10 years. I just had the plan that I didn't want to be doing that thing I was doing for the next 20 years, right? So I put myself in a position to make the choice that I made, right? Like, I could not have quit my job if I didn't have money. Not only if I didn't have money, but also if I wasn't debt free, right? Like, if I had not focused on eliminating my student loan debt, like the only debt I had at that time when I quit was my car loan. And that was because they gave me a 0% interest rate, right? So there was no reason to not just finance the car, right? And then I sold the car for more than what was left on the note, right? So like,
Oh, because this was like during COVID and like everything came to a grinding halt.
Exactly. So I was able to, I intentionally bought a car that was used, that had less than, I think it is like 15,000 miles, 10,000 miles on it, or 5,000 miles, whatever one. When it gets to like, I think over 5 or over 10, the price astronomically like changes for the car as far as the value of the car. So I intentionally bought a car that was like under that threshold, so I could not have to pay the price for a new car, but I could essentially get a new car. And then I maintained it really well. I didn't drive it a ton. I was conscious of mileage, so that when it came time for me to sell it, it had still low mileage, which is what somebody wants. So the person getting it is getting a car that's like 3 years old, but it has low mileage and it still looks and feels new, right? So that's why like I was able to sell it for more than was left on the note, right? Like, I literally think I got a check in the mail one day for like, a couple $1,000s or something. I was like, well, that was nice. Like,
it's called, Adriel, in finance speak, it's called arbitrage. It's a risk-free profit, which normally doesn't exist, but a car. I agree, and Ramit would agree with you on this. If you listen to his podcast, he hates big expensive trucks and like brand new cars, like people who he's like, if you like cars and you can afford it, go for it. But like, most people who come to his podcast are there for a reason. And he's like, I hate the big trucks. You need to sell it. So he would definitely agree with you. A car is such a money pit. Like, I have a nice car right now. It's my first car. I love it, but I'm having real questions whether I want to continue this and this expense. Like once the initial kind of novelty wears out, this is just a really big chunk of money that's going out every single
Yes.
month.
You have to pay for gas, you have to pay for insurance. Like, oh my, it's very expensive. The one car that I would buy new, and this would mean that I was like, I don't know, I've gotten to like Jeff Bezos level, would be an Aston Martin. It would be a little pink Aston Martin, and I'd be driving around Paris in it and a stick shift. So that's really it. Like that would be the
Of
only
course,
other
because
car
it's
I'd
like the
buy.
influencers lifestyle. It's influencers lifestyle. We have a few minutes left. If anyone wants to drop any questions, you can.